Talking football with Bengal Jim and friends. We're talking football. We hope this never ends. Jimmy, James, and Tom are back for more. Like Joey B, we're here for season 4 with Bengal guests and stories not heard before. There's Tony, Mark, and Jamie, as well as our charity, Hooter Nation joining from far and wide. Every Tuesday night, the guys are back at it live. By the fans, for the fans, from day one, it's time to have some fun. We're talking football with Bengal Jim and friends. We're talking football. We hope this never ends. The Bengal boys stop by to drop the speed. Don't get your popcorn ready and take a seat. Season 4 will end with the Lombardi.
Welcome, everybody, to a Bengal Gymless episode of Bengal Jim and Friends. Jimmy and James are in a high-level tailgate meeting at an undisclosed location, and pretty much let Jamie and myself know that we weren't important enough to be there. But we're glad to be here, and we'd rather be here. So
this is our favorite episodes, isn't it? When Jimmy's not here.
This is going to be the Emmy Award winner. This is officially the inmates are in charge of the penitentiary episode.
I will let you know, though, I'm already fired because I played the season 4 intro. No one gave me the season 5 intro, and I've been on since I think season 3. So
you were on this past.
I feel like it's been a while since I've been on here. I don't do off season, guys. You know this about me. I'm not an off season guy. I don't.
Too much going on in Canada.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and I really don't care what our quarterback's hairstyle is. I want something to talk about. Now that games are starting again, we got something to talk about. That's when I'm back.
You contact us about free agency and the draft and so forth.
I'm in the group chat. We do it, but I don't do the mock drafts and all this stuff. Like I don't care. Let's just play football. That's what I'm waiting for.
So. Well, I'm happy you're here.
I'm happy
to be here with everybody. And we are fortunate enough to be joined by one of the Bengals' greatest kickers of all time. He was, I should say, a franchise player for the Bengals, the only Pro Bowl kicker in Bengals history. And he's a coach. He's an instructor. He's his own boss. And we're fortunate enough to have with us tonight Shayne Graham. Sham.
There we go.
Shayne, welcome so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys having me.
No, thank you. So, well, tell us about, if you don't mind, before we get into football, though, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about Elite Winning Solutions and where you're going to be in the coming days.
So I do, a lot of private instruction for kicking, punting, long snapping, also special teams in general. I work with a lot of high school coaches, some college coaches, just kind of the general dynamics of scheme, technique, and things like that when it comes to the return game, the kicking game in general. I work with coaches on how to actually maintain and train their kickers during the season, how to manage them during the season. And then I work with a lot of, across the country, a lot of specialists, kickers, punters, and long snappers via, small camps, group sessions, a lot of private lessons, including, group sessions on weekends. But, this past summer, I had a camp in Cincinnati. It was the first annual Shayne Graham kicking camp. I'll be having that every summer in Cincinnati. And then I'm going to have one back in Virginia, kind of a mixture between my hometown and Virginia Tech, where I went to college. And then I'll probably have larger camps in the Michigan, eastern, western Michigan to Chicago area as well.
Cool.
No doubt you're staying busy. So, well, you mentioned the specialty of kicking. And we, for the first time in person, we'd seen it on TV a little bit, read about it all off season. But for the first time in person this past weekend's preseason game against the Buccaneers, we saw the NFL's new kickoff rules. first part of the question is, what do you think the reasoning was behind it? Do you support it?
It's always hard to say, especially in the beginning, because, coaches, the techniques they're trying to use are still some of the techniques that come from the original form of it, right? How to leverage blocks, how to beat blocks, how to find space as a returner. And when you're kind of limited by the almost geometry of the formations you're able to set, you don't get a lot of the angles and things that you used to be able to get to create leverage for your blocks. So until certain things are kind of realized over time, they may not be as exciting, because it's almost like just one big running play where the offensive line is spread out across the field and they're just trying to make a hole somewhere and hope the returner can get to it, right? But I think it's going to get creative. I think you're going to get kickers that are going to try to start placing the ball a little bit different than just popping it down or just trying to drive it as hard as you can. When you're going to place it, you're trying to make it hard for the returners to catch it and be able to get their momentum going forward up the field. You're going to try to get them running laterally. Then they've got to settle their feet, then turn and accelerate north-south. I think it can be good, but so far I haven't seen anything, really dynamic about it. I'm just not seeing the high-speed collisions, and that's what they're trying to eliminate. It's the safety aspect between concussions and, a lot of the high-speed collisions that you might get on kickoffs. For some people, that was exciting. For some players, that's how they made the team, was their kickoff coverage, because they were kind of a bubble player at a position, but they really had a knack for running down, avoiding blocks, and making tackles. And that might be a guy that makes that 5th, 6th slot receiver, on the team, or a backup safety or something like that outside of that, starting 22 on offense and defense. It really kind of helps you make the team when you show that value on special teams, and kickoff was a big part of that. So I kind of think it would have helped me, because I was never a huge touchback guy. So maybe I would have not had to worry so much about not having so many touchbacks if that was a rule when I was playing. But yet, I hope guys don't get so caught up in trying to get so perfect with these swings and off check swings and different things they're going to do that it messes up their field goal swing technique. But, I think it'll be interesting, and I really can't wait to see how a full season of it plays out.
You mentioned the perfection of it. You played for Darren Simmons. We've heard a lot about him sitting in his office, watching tape with the dry board, computers, and everything else. How do you see him addressing this problem, working with Evan McPherson this year, at least on the kickoff aspect of it?
Well, I think, Darren not only is such a detail-oriented coach, he's so creative. I think that while he uses a lot of old school technique and makes it a little bit better, I think he's going to be able to be somewhat innovative and maybe try to find some creative ways to return. But, I think the techniques and everything in coverage is really not going to change. And he's always kind of been tried and true with these techniques on the coverage part. I think with Evan, he's just going to try to make him be creative. I mean, that's all really any of us, trying to help someone kick this. None of us have done it. None of us have seen what is supposed to be the prototype or the cookie cutter mold for this, right? So we're going to see, are guys going to be able to hit a ball that doesn't have the hang time, that doesn't have the necessary deep ball that we used to see, because now hang time and a high ball isn't necessarily an advantage, because now that the returners, once they catch it, that's when you can start running. So hang time becomes irrelevant. Like hang time is, and you'd rather not have a guy just sit there and catch it and go. You kind of want them running over looking like this or like that as they're catching it. And that way, even the guys trying to block don't necessarily know where they're trying to create some sort of a hole for the returner to get through. So I really am curious to see how it plays out. And I'd also like to see not a penalty on every single return I was watching the game the other night just for a second, and it was like every play was a penalty, and it was little things, but it was a penalty on every one.
The flip side of that is the return aspect. What would you be advising coaches, and what do you think the Bengals will be doing different? What should we look for?
You know, if I'm coaching it, I'm trying to get guys that can hold on to blocks, that can establish dominance once they do lock on to someone without holding. But I think something that's going to that you might see is a little bit of trickery, because if you're going to have two guys back there, are you going to try to create misdirection with potential reverses or fake reverses, or how are we going to create a counter to where you try to get people going one way and return it the other way so that you can gain extra leverage in your blocks? I think what we're going to see is probably one of the bigger returns when executed properly is going to be kind of a cross-field reverse where everyone chases the ball to one side where it's kicked. He starts running across back to the middle and then tosses it to the other guy running the opposite direction. And he's going to have one contained guy on the edge to beat. And if that guy can get beat, it could be a big play. So that's my prediction, is that I think some of the first big plays are going to be some sort of misdirection, trickery, whatever, but other than that, it's just one big wide running play from the line of scrimmage almost, with those guys being only 5 yards apart.
So we actually have a viewer question. I'm going to chime in since we're talking about the new kickoff rules. So Josh asks, Shayne, do you think the style of return promotes more running backs as returners? Seems very much more like off tackle returns as opposed to what it was before.
I think you could. I think you're probably going to get a little bit more of those scat back type guys. I think you might get some of those utility returners that you used to see every now and then, like a Michael Lewis, like a guy that's 160 pounds, that's not a big bruising guy, but they're really shifty, a lot of acceleration, a lot of, direction change in a small box type person with good vision. Having guys like that can change direction and accelerate really fast kind of gives a potential roster spot to someone that may or may not have been big enough any other way. But now that you're probably going to get returns almost every kickoff, you want the ball in a guy's hands like that. I mean, yeah. This would have been a time where, if you remember Peter Warrick in college, this would have been the time to have a guy like that catching those kicks, because he was just elite in small confined spaces with how he could make people miss, but also get downhill really fast. And then, you're seeing some of these guys get some opportunities that aren't necessarily, the biggest, or maybe even straight line speed, but they accelerate fast. And once they can get ahead of you, then it's hard to really catch up with them.
Right. That's fair. Tom?
Moving on from that, we have here in Cincinnati, as you know, the last couple of years, a bit of a rotation at punter. We had a good guy, a good punter who didn't do so well at a crucial time, got injured last training camp, lost his job, and Drew Chrisman. So we now have Brad Robbins, who had his moments last year, but wasn't as consistent a punter as he was in Michigan, where he was one of the finest in the nation. So they brought in a little bit of competition. Part of it's gone. Part of it remains. There's some that say Ryan Reckhow, the youngster from BYU, may have been a guy Darren Simmons wanted all along for that competition. Brad, I don't know if you heard, Brad got hurt today.
I did not.
Warming up for practice. There's been really no update. He limped off the field, didn't get carted off, limped off the field. It looked like a upper right leg injury, was speculation from the media. There was no update after practice with coach about it, because coach didn't know. if you're a rookie
I'm texting
punter,
him right now. Sorry.
So
you're
we
fine.
had a live update on Bengal Jim.
You can,
There we
if
go.
you can break the story
I,
for us.
I don't. I'm not going to give you guys inside information.
I know.
Trust
I'm
me.
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I've been in that locker room and other NFL locker rooms enough to know that if information like that isn't given out by the doctors, it's not good news.
I'm just kidding. Don't worry.
You're, and that fraternity needs to be upheld. That loyalty needs to be upheld.
Yeah,
we're not saying you should, but with at least for right now, going into this weekend, we have Ryan as our punter, and good luck for him. He's our guy. We're backing him. But I found it interesting after all the years we had with stability at the punting position. Coach Simmons last couple of years has made it very clear, hey, they can punt all they want and they need to, they have to. But I consider 60% of the responsibility of that job to be the holder. Yes, exactly. Ryan had a field goal attempt with Evan this past game. It was a 58-yarder. It just missed right. It had plenty of leg on it, but just missed right. How difficult, and I'm sure that you had times you had to, when you're used to a guy, even if he's been the only guy for a year plus, and you get a new guy who's only been a couple of weeks. How much of a change is that? How much difference does it make?
It can make a difference, especially if their body positioning and mannerisms are faster, quicker, higher, lower, where they put their knee. There's different things. It's hard to really explain, but what you're seeing in your visual line of sight to the spot, if you see something a little different, then it can affect you, but it shouldn't affect you. We're focused, hyper focused on the spot where the holder has his hand down on the ground and his other hand is here waiting to catch it. And you look at the holder's finger. When he picks that finger up to catch the ball, that's when you leave and approach the kick. You should be so dialed in that that's all you see and nothing else matters. I know I've had that changeover before at different times. And sometimes guys are faster and better at getting the ball down than other guys are. And when they're faster and better, it gives the kicker more time to look at the ball, right? That little split second gives you that little warm, fuzzy feeling that's nice to have when you're kicking. And when you have that with someone you're accustomed to, it's great. When it's someone that maybe you've seen bobble or slow to rotate, or, they're just a little slower with the catch and putting the ball down on the ground, all of those things can play into it, but it shouldn't play into it. But I promise you that is being evaluated. So, that is and Darren is exactly right, because we don't punt as much as we used to, because one, between analytics and people going for it on fourth down a little bit more, between kickers kicking longer field goals on average than they were kicking in the 90s and the early 2000s and 2010s. You got guys kicking 58 yarders, 56 yarders, 57 yarders. I mean, I think I attempted one field goal over 55 yards my whole career in Cincinnati. And it was a 62-yarder at Tampa that I missed wide right. There was a game winner when we got kind of screwed over on a stupid call when Justin tackled the quarterback on a sack. Yep. They called it a unnecessary roughness or some crap like that. Gave him a whole fresh set of downs. But anyway, that you're holding more than you are punting, so it's important. And especially when you have, a talent like Evan that gives you the opportunity to score points from 60 plus and in, and confidently score points for you, then, that's going to play a big role. I don't know how Ryan's holding skills are. I'm sure they're fine. I haven't watched him. I don't know. I worked with him a little bit at the East-West game this past year. So I saw him do some stuff, but I wasn't really able to kind of like break down things and study slow motion film and look at things the way that I'm used to kind of evaluating now. But I'm sure he'll do fine. I'm sure Evan won't miss a beat with him holding for him. And then hopefully Brad gets back to kind of continue the competition that they're having. And, either way, I think they'll be in good hands.
Literally. So, but you gave me a tutorial one time. We were off the air just before we went on the air, and I asked you, in an emergency, or are there different guys that can do the holding? Guys that use their hands all the time, a backup quarterback, a backup receiver, and so forth. Do you think that's a possibility, or do you stick with the punter because he has that much more time to work with the place kicker every day?
You stick with the punter. That's a no-brainer, especially because I'm sure Ryan held in college, so he's got experience doing it. And there's a difference between saying a guy's a good athlete and has good hands to catch a ball, because when you catch a football as a receiver, a lot of the times it's over the shoulder, it's straight like this, it's over your head, it's all these different positions. Holding is almost sideways, so you're catching everything, and then how quickly can you take that down to the ground and hold it and get your hand out of the way so your kicker can be confident and comfortable to keep their timing and tempo so they can be their best version of themselves, versus having a little bit of hesitation because someone else doesn't have the natural instincts of constant repetition to build those confidence parts that they see each other do every day in practice. So the quarterback's focus is catching the shotgun snap or securing the snap under center, and then finding their target and all the reads they've got to do. A receiver or tight end, they're literally busting their tails all day, running routes, making sure that they're getting their reads right, making sure that if they're on special teams, they're studying, focused on that stuff. If they all of a sudden have to hold two, they don't have the time, energy, and probably the desire or the pride in that skill. So I would definitely, I say, stick with the punter being the holder.
So I have a question about Elite Winning Solutions.
A question about it? What about it?
Yeah. So, yeah, you're making fun of the Canadian thing. But I don't hear it. I don't hear it, eh?
Sorry.
I'm getting chirped by Shane Graham. That's the first. So I just, looking at your website before you came on, one of the things that you, do for training and consulting is mental performance. So you just mentioned about being dialed in earlier on. So what kind of techniques do you teach, or what does that look like if someone goes to you teaching them mental performance? How do you teach that?
So there's several layers of it. Part of it is kind of understanding what confidence is in the first place.
Right.
And confidence is when you have conviction. Conviction can be your work ethic. Did I work hard enough? Do I have any regrets? Do I feel guilty for not, for going to the lake or the beach one day versus I could have been training or getting better physically? And then your skill set. How confident are you in your skill set, and how much conviction do you have in your skill set? Do you truly believe in what you did? Do you truly believe you've done enough? Those are major aspects, because if you're not prepared by doing the tedious, repetitious things that aren't the fun, exciting parts of training, then you're truly never going to fully believe in what you can do with your performance. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is actually how to go through the way of giving yourself faith and conviction within yourself while using visualization processes. And that's a little more intricate. I can't really give all the details in that, but really a lot of it is understanding fear and understanding how to overcome fear. And really that main thing, if I just, long story short, it's all about having a routine and process that's so detailed that you somewhat distract yourself from that fear of the result. And you can't put the result anywhere in your process. So I talk, there's two major things I talk about. I talk about if your routine and process is a well-oiled machine with a bunch of, turning gears of multiple sizes and angles, all working smoothly together, that is the only way you can keep that machine going, is to stick with the same thing over and over, the same routines and processes to actually achieve the task you're trying to do. If you start going into the thoughts of the result and obsessing over the result, then that's like throwing a loose gear in that machine. And then all those gears just get bent up and fall apart. And you can't really control what you're doing at that point because you're so worried. And what that does is that leads to fear of failure. And all of a sudden, if you're so afraid of screwing up and so afraid of failing, then, the physiological response, for some people is different. For some people, there's hesitation, there's sweating, there's itchy skin, there's heart rate, there's all these things that happen. And for some people it's less, but teaching you how to program yourself out of that. And that's something that, I dealt with in early parts of my career. I dealt with in late parts of my career. And there's been times where I've missed field goals that I was a little worried about things. And there's been times that I've made field goals when I wasn't worried about anything. And I've also made a few that I was worried, but still made it. And there, so we're human. We go through different things, but I learned through that throughout my career, like, hey, sometimes things don't always go your way. I wish I made that field goal at the end of the game at Pittsburgh in 2008, I think it was. I wish I never missed any of the kicks in the playoffs against the Jets. But you know what? I had to learn from them. Life goes on. And when those things happen, you start to program yourself how to handle things that aren't always your way. And you start to realize, like, I can't be afraid of that. Yeah. And then, one of the other major things I talk about is, if you can imagine the 17th green at TPC Sawgrass is an island green surrounded by water. So I use the example, the average golfer is playing this golf hole and they're given an option of balls to play with. They pay $10 and they have a Pro V1, however much a Pro V1 costs. I don't play with them. I'm not good enough to, but if anyone ever hands me one, I'm playing with it until it's gone. Yep. But you also have a bucket full of X-outs, which are what, 10, 15, 25 cents a piece. Yep. And these are the balls that are scuffed or whatever. Maybe somebody gathered them out of the water. But the average golfer, what do you think they're going to pick when they go to that island green to tee off with?
They want to hit the best ball.
Well, the average golfer, honestly, is going to pick the X-out ball.
Because they think they're going in the water.
Because they already think they're going in the water. So they're afraid of in the water. So it affects their whole process. So they go ahead and grab that X-out and if it goes in the water, it's a big deal. Right. Okay. The golfers or the people that may not even be physically the most talented, but the people with the least fear of failure are going to throw down that $10 golf ball and say, this gives me the best chance, because if I hit that X-out ball perfect, it still might roll off the back of the green. But if I hit this one perfect, it's going to have a soft touch and give me spin and control and touch and all those things. So I talk about having like a Pro V1 mentality. Sure. And in order to give it my best shot, I can't be afraid to lose my ball, right? So that's kind of the analogy I use.
That's a great analogy, because you're right. You go in there already thinking you're going to miss by picking the cheaper ball, right? Because who cares if it goes in the water? And
I've seen people do that a million times on all the rounds I've played over the years. Whenever there's water in play, I see people literally say, I'm going to throw this shit ball out because whatever. And that's what they're going to hit with.
Interesting. Good lessons for off the field too. How long does it take you when you're working with someone to know if they've got it or not?
It depends on how old they are.
Yeah.
If they have time to develop, I see potential that is raw and really rough around the edges that I feel like might be able to be polished and chiseled down a little bit, that their physical ability can start to take over. And then, there's sometimes you can see it in 10 minutes.
Really, eh? That quick?
Yeah, I mean, it can be faster, but there's some people it can take time, especially if they're younger, because you don't know how much they're going to physically develop. You don't know how much they're going to obsess over details of their training and skill and technique and all of that. So, I've seen guys improve vastly in short amount of time that I've worked with. And I've seen some guys that I haven't worked with improve over a year or two and become NFL potential guys that at one point when I watched them kick, I would have never guessed they'd be a guy being considered for the NFL. But then there's guys that guy's got a chance in the NFL, and then later on down the road, I haven't heard of them. They never won the job in college or whatever it may have been. So you see that, I mean, it's so many. There's so many aspects. I mean, you can go on YouTube, and you can or social media, and you can see guys bombing 70-yarders.
I've seen that,
and they're just not as consistent. And maybe haven't had the mental strength that some of the other guys that are playing right now. And that's nothing against some of them, because I think there's some guys out there that could play. Yeah. But there's some guys out there that, they're putting their highlight reels out. And, these are college kids and high school kids put these highlight reels out, and you only see the best balls, but you don't see the consistency from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 versus 1 and 7.
Right. Is there anybody you're working with right now or have worked with recently that we're going to hear about? We're going to know? I don't want to put that pressure on the younger guys, fair. That I've worked with. I think Spencer Schrader in Indianapolis has got a good shot. I think Cam Little's got a good shot. There's some guys still in college that I really think can make it. I'm not going to mention their names just because I don't want to put that kind of pressure on them. But I actually really liked Austin McNamara. He's not a big ball hitter, the same that I think where Brad had kind of been hitting the ball really well this preseason. And Ryan, I think, is a bit of a big ball hitter. I think Austin is a bit more consistent directionally with what he does versus the power shots. I think that's going to give him a chance somewhere at some point. I just know that maybe it didn't play into really winning the job in Cincinnati, but I think he's a great kid, and I think he's got a good future ahead of him. Cool. And I think there's a few other guys out there that I've had limited access to. And there's some free agents out there that I honestly think can play. But there's how do you get experience until you get experience type situations. Yeah. You got to get the right opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Tom, I'll let you close this out.
I'm gonna get abuse Shayne with one more, and it's a future question for you.
Sorry, I hogged you there. Sorry about
that. No. A two-parter. One of which, when the Bengals seem to extend their players, they do it about now, training camp, right up until the season starts. I've always wondered maybe why wouldn't we go after guys a little bit harder in the spring before the price seems to raise at a particular position when it does inevitably. And I ask you particularly because Evan McPherson is up after this year. And it sounded like that they were, and they still are, I believe, talking, a lot of communication. Everybody seems to like each other. I think everybody agrees that Evan wants to be here and is needed here. And then Harrison Butker signed for $6.4 million a year. And I'm guessing maybe even Evan's agent went, really? Do you see that as a problem? And you were franchised once. You were a Pro Bowl kicker. I mean, do you? I mean, is it a thing where, if you're Evan, you have to go in and say, guess what? I've made, due to circumstance and large, but I've made some of the biggest clutch kicks in this franchise's history. I'm loved by the fans. I'm a good guy. And you can say that about just about everybody in that locker room. But I'm a good guy. I give back to the community.
Team player.
I'm a credit to the city. And, hey, I know you got to pay Joe. I know you got a lot, but I'm better than Harrison Butker. I want my $6.5 million. Or do you think things calm down, slot in? And, if you're an agent, what do you do as a kicker's agent right now?
Well, you don't let him be a valedictorian, but besides that.
So that's a tough one,
I'm sorry.
No, because I went
We're
through
throwing the hard questions at you tonight.
Well, you did go through it.
Yeah, and I don't think I handled it well. I look back on it and wish I'd handled it differently. Do I think that the original offers given to me were anywhere? No, they weren't. They weren't good. And I'm not saying that to be spoiled or unappreciative, but the contract that I got the first time. So like my initial negotiation with Cincinnati was, hey, we claimed you off waivers from Carolina. You're our kicker. Okay, no argument. I'm coming. I'll be there tomorrow.
Opportunity.
Played the 2003 season, had a good year. Was told in the last few weeks of the season, hey, they want to give you an extension. We're going to get this figured out. When I had my exit meeting with Marvin, when the season was over, he said, hey, we just don't have the money. We're gonna level two. There was a name for it. I can't think of what it was.
I remember.
But it was, I was a restricted free agent at that point, which meant I think there was like a compensatory pick or something if someone else. And it was a little bit more than league minimum. I wouldn't have cared. I was happy to play. Mm-hmm. But then I get an offer from Jacksonville. Jacksonville throws an offer on the table. I sign it. A lot of money, okay, especially for what I was used to. And I signed it, and Cincinnati then matched it. So I stayed in Cincinnati. So I never actually negotiated that contract with Cincinnati. Jacksonville negotiated it for me, but Cincinnati had right of first refusal, so they got to match it. I played through most of that contract. At that last year, hey, we want to extend you. Great. It's during the season. I don't want it up here. I want after the year's right over. So waited for that to happen. Then the offers came in. Well, the bonus that I was being offered was less than the one I had on my first contract. And all the money was on the back end, which means if you get cut or you get injured and you can't play anymore, they give you a split for 1 year, or however it works. And then the back end of that contract is gone. Or they give you another extension before you get to that heavy loaded back end. So you really never get the big meat and bones of meat and potatoes of the contract. So if I had just said, listen, I'm not trying to break the bank. I'm not trying to get the top, whatever contract, but let's just put a little bit more on the front. Let's figure out a way to make sure that this security can happen so that it can't be pulled out from under me at some point. Unfortunately, the way it got negotiated is they just never got anywhere near. Then I got franchised. I made a mistake. I kind of let people know that I wasn't happy about being franchised, which it was a lot of money to be franchised. I should have never looked at it that way. I should have been grateful and just stayed positive. Unfortunately, that was a lesson I learned in that moment. And so I think Evan has a lot of leverage. I really don't want to see the negotiation happen during the season. Let football be football. Don't let football be money and business during the season. Figure it out before or after. And I would love to see that get figured out, because you can expect someone to take the hometown discount. And honestly, I would have taken the hometown discount of staying in Cincinnati, because it's so much easier to not have to pack your house up and move. I would love to have said I never left Cincinnati and got to be a part of the community for all the things I was able to be a part of when I was there and never left. That would have meant more to me than being the top paid kicker, like way more to me than being higher paid. So from the mistakes that I made, I've told this to Evan while he was in college. Like I talked to him about the mistakes I made about that. And the one thing I'll say is that the pride comes before the fall. When you start saying things like, I'm the best, I'm this, I'm that, and I'm not saying Evan does that.
Oh, he hasn't.
He hasn't, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think even if his agent, I think, yes, they deserve to have that leverage. He's done so well that I think if that's the market, get him as close to it as you can. But sometimes it's worth it to not have the pride of I did more than Harrison, but yet you can say, I don't have to move my house. I don't have to sell my house. I don't have to move the place where he just had his child there, like he doesn't have to pick up and move and deal with all that and doesn't have to find a new community to get, connected to. There is a little bit of value, I think, in that hometown discount. And I wish I had realized that before it was my time to leave Cincinnati.
Fair.
Okay. Fair enough.
So that being said, Katie, Mike, Troy, take care of Evan.
Well, we agree. We want him here for a very long time. So like you, he's special, but no, Shayne, thank you so much for giving us your time tonight.
Great chat.
And if somebody wants to find out and participate in your camp, so forth, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
EliteWinningSolutions.com. That's where, or my social media. I try to reply to as many messages as I can. I don't always hit them all, but EliteWinningSolutions.com. That's probably the best way. I get those emails. I reply to those emails, especially if they're business related. I can't always get to the can you send me something signed stuff. That's kind of hard to do sometimes. But, typically when people reach out, hey, when are you in town? If we come to town there, I've hosted college, high school, and pro guys at my house so they don't have to get a hotel. So they can come here and we do training in my weight room in the house. We do film review on the big screen. We do mental performance presentations. I do situational presentations. And then we drive to the fields and train and come back and watch the film. It's kind of an all-inclusive type deal that I do here. But, I wish I could be in every city everywhere, but I can't. But, in the future, I will be setting up probably some workshops in different cities.
Cool.
But always once a year in Cincinnati.
Yes.
We're thankful for that. So, well, thanks so much. And hey, when you do hear back from Brad, tell him we wanted to heal up quick and we said hi.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for your time, Shayne. Much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Shayne. Night. Still a first class guy.
Sorry, man. I hijacked the question. Jimmy never lets me get more than one question, and so I just took advantage of it.
You were on a roll, man. You were knocking it out of the park. Something about Shayne, he alluded to, and this is probably something we don't express enough to you guys. It's something, we do hear things that we are polite enough and considerate enough of our guests not to pass on, but I don't believe Shayne would mind, and he alluded a little bit to it there. His last game here was a playoff game against the Jets.
Yeah.
Where the Bengals had been on a roll and did not play well that day. Didn't play well at all. And he missed 2 field goals. Wasn't the difference in the game. The Bengals would not have won anyway. It would have made it closer. Maybe it would have put in a position to win. Not the way they played that day. But he was crushed. And when he left here, when we got in touch with him, he was a little leery about reaching back out and being involved with us fans.
Sure.
He thought he was hated. And I think a lot of that came from, and maybe some of it still exists, a media presence that enjoys being pessimistic automatically when it comes to the Bengals, jumping on and pouring on when things go wrong. But
sniffing out a story, right?
Yeah, and they are human beings, but he's also one of the guys that when he has come back and visited with us, and he's done it a couple of times and interacted with the fans,
Awesome.
it really, he's a great guy, and it means so much to him and so many of these other guys when you as fans talk to them and smile, and they can see what the real Cincinnati is about, what Bengal fans are really about. We want to win. We want to remember, and we do remember the good times.
Well, and we talked about this in the show before. Like, there's no secret. This team historically has not been good at honoring the players of the past. Now, they've done a really good job lately, right? And we sing their praises for what they've done. The Ring of Honor, all the stuff, the support the team gives us us, Jimmy and those guys, when they're doing their stuff to celebrate the older guys. But yeah, they haven't done a great job, of doing that. But they're doing better now, and I love seeing that when we have these fan fests and stuff. And you bring these older guys back, and they even say like, "Wow, like people remember me."
So many guys. We just had it in July last month. You're good. Last month, so many of them said, we were good. We didn't win in the playoffs, but we had a good year. Maybe we were right around 500. We were a little above 500, but God, we didn't pick up a newspaper. We didn't dare turn on the radio because we were getting killed. And it wasn't just a casual mention or a slide remark. It was constant, nonstop. And I think a lot of that's changed. A lot of that has changed. You mentioned how the team treats its players. I don't think it's going to be just a recent development. I think that's permanent.
I think so too.
I think the mentality in so many ways at Paycor has changed for the better in that regard. It is permanent. The people that work down there now are phenomenal. Their people skills, and it's not just their skills that they're taught. I think they're genuinely good people.
Yep.
And it shows. But to so many of these guys, when they see you at whatever, they're walking through the tailgates and they're recognized with a smile and a handshake. Some of these big guys, it almost brings them to tears. So,
Brian makes look at Jim Breach. How long he signed for people at Jungle Jam?
Jim, if I didn't, I think I mentioned this the week after, but as we kept rotating going out there, Jimmy James and myself checking on that first group when the sun was roasting. And by the way, we've noted that, and that's going to be adjusted for in the future. But those guys were out there, and there were a couple of guys in particular, Jim Breach, Bob Johnson, the original Bengal, who's not old, but certainly one of the oldest Bengals, and who had recently had some surgery. And then also ML Harris, who was back there. And his other guys fulfilled their obligations. In fact, went beyond the time they were to be there. Jim Breach stayed. Bob Johnson stayed. It was somebody who had bought Bob, who finally kind of whispered in his ear, hey, Bob, you can't keep doing this in this heat. You've got to give up. And they were well past the time they would be there. But he fought till, he was literally forced to leave. And Jim Breach looked at me at one point and said, as long as there are people there, I'll sign. And he did. ML Harris practically did the same thing. We've had fantastic guys in the past. We've got a very, very, very special group in that locker room now. And I don't think it is any coincidence that the character is so high and the level of play of the organization is so high.
I wanted to be at Jungle Jam so bad. I've already texted Jimmy my dates for a music festival for next year because unfortunately you guys booked it the same weekend as my biggest event that I do up here in Brantford, Ontario, Canada. But I was like, we are a music festival, right? So we had 8,000 people Friday, about 9 or 10,000 people Saturday. But I'm watching the bands on stage, and I'm looking down at my phone, checking all the pictures and stuff from the from Jungle Jam. It looked crazy. It looked like it was a great time for an annual event.
We knew how many people were coming. We had, the place was full. The line was around. We had some guys who were going to come that didn't when they saw the line.
Right.
But thank you again to all everybody that worked so hard and volunteered, and those players. Trent Irwin, Brad Robbins. Hope you get better soon. And all the veteran players, Bob Johnson, Ken Anderson, Dave Lapham, great Dan Horde, Jeff Hobson. We couldn't have it without Jeff Hobson. So, but it was a special day, and there are ideas and possibilities floating around already for next year that are being explored and asked about. But I will tell you this: it was fantastic this year. It's going to be even much better in the future.
Can't wait to see how that goes. So, obviously we're in preseason now, getting back into football form. I know we keep in touch, obviously, during the off season with the group chat and stuff. I know I'm not on the show, but I still feel like I'm part of the show.
You are?
I appreciate that. But what do you want to, I'm sure we're going to do a show kind of previewing the season and talking about what we think, but we got some time. I got a Jack and Coke in my hand. There's a little fireside chat with me and you. You
cool.
want to talk about the season here? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking, number one, it's Mike Brown gave an interview when we went to the Super Bowl a few years ago, and he said so many things, no matter what team you are and how good you are, so many things have to go right during the course of a season for you to get to the Super Bowl. One, you have to stay healthy. Two, you have to have the right guys. Three, your schedule has to be right. Four, you can't be screwed by the referees. And, we've run into some of those problems over time. I think just like the last several years, this is a team built to get to and win the Super Bowl. But a lot of those things do need to go right. And there are still some questions. I'm still worried about
Is that Jimmy telling you to get off?
That would be James wanting to know why we aren't done yet. And you know what? If you got a problem with it, log in, big boy.
That's right. Let's go.
Yeah, the inmates are in charge of the penitentiary.
That's right. I have control of the end button, and I'm not pressing it right now. But it's the internet, baby. There's no show after this. We can do what we want.
They can get there. I'm a little worried about stopping the run, their ability to stop the run. I'd like to see that and be a little more confident in that. I think the offense, even though there were reports that today's practice was a rough one for the offense, I think the offense is going to be fine, especially that offensive line settles in. I think there are a lot of good things, historically good things, that can happen from that offense this year with the new toys Joe has to work with. And so no, I think it's going to be a special season. It's not going to be easy. Kansas City, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland are going to have a lot to say. But no, I think this is a team built to get to and win the Super Bowl.
I agree with you about stopping the run. I think we have the offensive power to put up some points, which I think is going to hide some of that weakness on the other side of the ball potentially. If we can go out and score 3 or 4 touchdowns, and we can afford to give up a couple here and there, hopefully. But I don't know, man. I'm looking at the schedule. I think I'm really looking forward to week 2. Obviously, right? You get KC out the gate. I think we come away with a win in that game. We have a realistic chance of going like 7-8-0. Like, honestly, and I'm not being a homer. Obviously, we're all Bengals fans, but I think we got the Patriots. You beat KC. You got the Commanders. You got the Panthers. Baltimore is going to be a tough game. You got the Giants. Cleveland. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that.
You're good.
Whatever. I think that's, we'll know who they are before we see them in week 7. So, And then I don't know, Eagles. You got Eagles, Raiders. You got Baltimore again, obviously Chargers. Man, week 12 is the bye. Like I'm I'm excited. Not that I want to rush time because I want to enjoy all these games, but I'm excited to see week 12 where we're at. You know, this is 11-0 team at week 12. I'm not saying they're 11-0. 11, 8-2. That's only 10.
The most this team has ever won in a year is 12 games.
Yeah.
I think they can exceed it this year.
I think so too.
Again, if we stay healthy, I think that's a very realistic goal and somewhere to get to. I'm not happy with the schedule. I'm excited to get after Kansas City. I'm not happy that right out of the gate, they get three extra days to rest up and prepare for us.
I agree.
I'm not happy about that at all.
I agree.
But to compensate screwing us over there for the second year in a row, the NFL is sending us to Baltimore on a Thursday night. So we play our top rival for the division championship. We have to go to Baltimore on a Thursday night for the second year in a row. So, and just to really put the screws to it as best they can, we got that ridiculous 3 games in 10 days in December. Right. When you're all beat up, you really need the wins. You really need the tiebreakers. The NFL did that to us. So we've never, ever had help from New York, and this year's not going to be any different.
I agree. You know what, though? I think confidence-wise, you get that KC team in week 2 and you go out with a victory. I like that better than beating them in, like week 16 or 17, when we're in a position where we need to win, but they might not be in a position where they necessarily need to win. You got to always have that kind of hanging over you.
It's odd you'd say that because at Jungle Jam, I'm not going to quote the player because I don't know if he would appreciate it, but he said he loved playing Kansas City in week 2. And I said, with the rest, and he shook his head. He goes, no. He said, look at Kansas City's history. He said, get them early when they're still messed up. He said, there's something about them. They never start off quick. He said, get them while they're still messed up before they've got their act together.
Right.
So maybe there's something to that.
I'm just excited for football to come back, man. It's off. I hate the off season so much. I do not like the off season. I just want meaningful. I want meaningful games.
At the rate they're going, they're talking about adding an 18th game, potentially adding a second bye. I'm not sure there's going to be an off season.
Yeah,
right? At the rate they're going.
Well, it's funny because I know you're a bit of a hockey fan too. You follow the Blue Jackets. They're already starting to see training camps and stuff getting ready to go. It's like I feel like I just finished watching Game 7 of the Stanley Cup like 2 weeks ago. And then I know you don't follow soccer. I know Mark does follow the Premier League. Premier League starts on Saturday. Like I was just watching my team like 2 months ago. It's crazy the turnaround time. Football just seems like it's forever between the end and the beginning of the season. So
it's like waiting for Christmas. It seems to take forever.
It really is.
Season does,
and that's why I don't really I obviously follow the news in the off season, but and respect to all the guys that cover. I understand you have to cover the team year round. I mean, you don't take a break, but when all we're talking about is Joe Burrow died and cut his hair, I just don't care. I don't care. Or I see people going crazy because one pass out of 50 that were thrown looked wobbly, and let's interview a doctor about his wrist. It's I can't do it.
Why interview a doctor? There are plenty of them on Twitter. So
yeah.
A little inside the show talk.
Yeah.
Kind of as we wind down, and hopefully I think you can achieve this. It has been James's goal to have the show go exactly 1 hour and have it end at the stroke of 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Are you going to pull that off and show him up tonight?
You know what? Has James ever done it?
No, it's never been done.
He's never done it. Okay, well, listen, I'm looking at my clock right now. It's 8:59. As soon as I hit 9, I'm hitting end.
All right.
Are you ready?
All right. Well, I don't know how many seconds that is. But
well, it's goodbye, buddy.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. watch the game Saturday at 1 at odd timing.
I am doing it. Soon at
Thank
9.
you very much.